say that this is just merely a down payment compared to what we are going to do to address the past discrimination, the current discrimination of black farmers.
Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France, of course, you good old boys in Canada and Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south. In the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful March the 10th, 2021. Rondo Deportes, bonjour, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Charlton, it was a beautiful day outside today, but it was like my sinuses were having a tennis match going back and forth between sneezing and running and stuff, so I got to get through that somehow.
Yeah.
But I want to thank our frontline healthcare workers, our nurses, doctors, and first responders. I'm going to have to come see you soon about these sinuses.
It's all fair with the sinuses, Big C. I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. When you go by and test drive yours, just tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars also all around the world. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing from 3,000 miles away. And I really do appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Spotify. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Apple TV, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. But you better have a smart TV, or you'll be sitting there looking at a still picture. Man, I love pausing, Big C. All kind of electronic stuff going on. It actually rained in California, and I guess all the electronics got messed up. It's all fair and love and war. But I will never pause on our Veterans Crisis Hotline. They really are experienced helping veterans and their loved ones get help. Big C, why should everybody care?
Well, Charlton, people are talking more and more about mental issues in America and around the world, but, our veterans have dealt with that for decades. And unfortunately, it has led to over 24 veterans a day, Charlton, committing suicide, an horrific number. Our veterans should not have to suffer through all the mental disabilities, financial and physical hardships that they do without the proper assistance in this country. We give out the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number, Charlton. It is there for every American to utilize. But help veterans out so they don't have to go beyond just utilizing that number, Charlton. It is a great opportunity for them to have someone to speak to and get them off of that cliff.
Very well said. 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. If you're online, simply go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net. You can definitely get our veterans some help. Also, very happy to be affiliated with Valley Homes Weekly TV on Dish TV, Direct TV, AT&T Uverse, TV 53, home of the San Francisco Giants and the Say Hey Kid, as well as a home run king, Barry Bonds. When you reach out to him, just tell him Big C sent you. Our goal is simple: recruit 10,000 real estate agents and brokers all over this country to help put their property listings on TV, just like McDonald's does it, car dealerships do it, sports teams do it, watch TV and real estate work for you. 800-772-8624. That's 800-772-8624. If you're looking for opportunities in real estate, go to bigcsports.pacwm.com. Most of our loans are underwritten by Rocket Mortgage on the wholesale side. I also want to say thank you to Xfinity, Comcast TV, and Comcast Spotlight for presenting Big C Sports to the universe. Just like God said, let there be light. Open your cell phones and say, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will see all of our apps pop up from all over the world, and I really do appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. So, Big C, did you say that you were having some allergy issues, and they were having a fist fight in your nose, Big C? Your thoughts?
I mean, Charlton, the weather's beautiful down here with all the trees blooming up and everything, but my allergies don't always appreciate that. And I mean, I'm sneezing, I'm coughing, and nose is running and stuff, and I look like a 2-year-old kid sometimes.
It's all if we could all look and feel like a 2-year-old kid, that would be great. I want to talk about, since allergies, allergies tend to happen when people are farming. And there's a lot of talk about the sports business and how someone just signed a $160 million contract or someone signed a $400 million contract. Nothing wrong with that. But part of the COVID-19 stimulus bill is to provide $4 billion in debt relief for black farmers and other farmers of color. And many of our Republican brethren, Big C, they're perturbed about it, Big C. They never had a problem when a lot of the times for the last 100 years, black farmers have been denied even the chance to apply for loans on farms. And quietly nestled in the latest COVID-19 relief package is a consequential provision, Big C, that's more important than an athlete. It would provide able to cancel billions of dollars of debt held by farmers of color. That move would also provide long-term relief to agricultural producers who've experienced discrimination, including hands of federal lenders, Big C. Oftentimes, they could not get a loan. And the last thing I'll say before I get your thoughts is so important. The American Rescue Plan, which passed in the Senate on Saturday and awaits an imminent final vote in the House, would earmark $4 billion in debt relief for the most racially disadvantaged of loans by our government to black farmers. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, black farmers in America have been a staple, but they've always been fought against from the mainstream of politics. You listen to Trump while he was president. He was always talking about how he was helping out the farmers, Charlton. But for every 100 white farmers who got bailed out by the Trump administration, only one black farmer got bailed out by the Trump. You have to look at black farmers in America, Charlton. Over the last 50 years, they have lost 1.2 million acres of land because they've been unable to get loans and keep their land sustainable, Charlton, through hard times. So there's been segregation against black farmers throughout American history and not wanting them to succeed, because when they could not succeed with their land, some white farmer would be able to go in and buy it up. So this is a great passage by the House and the Senate, and the president is going to sign it all into law tomorrow. And so hopefully these black farmers can get back on their feet with the debt relief that they're going to get. So they're not going to have to pay back past debt because they haven't had the ability to get the loans that the white farmers have.
Very well said. My family grew up in farming also, Big C. People just have to know this. I know we've been bamboozled. I know we've been hoodwinked, and people can't wait to see who won the game. But it's been an unfair denial of loans to farmers of color. It's a long documented history by the United States Department of Agriculture, one factor that has contributed to the rapid land loss among black agricultural producers. According to the Courtier's investigation, black farmers lost more than 90%. That's like 90%, Big C. Anyone in the world listening. Black farmers lost more than 90% of the land they owned between 1910 and 1997, while white farmers only lost about 2%. And we have so many people, they did it deliberately. It's like somebody that steals from you. They did it deliberately. They could come back in a tone, but if their ego's too big, they won't even put it in that they did it. But lost 90% of the land between 1910 and 1997, and white Americans only lost 2% from the same institutions. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, white Americans benefited from the loss of black American property, Charlton. They sit there and licking their chops knowing that that banker that they knew would not give the loan to that black man because of racism and whatever excuses that they wanted to utilize, Charlton. This is how America has always been. Discriminate against the black people, don't give them an opportunity to succeed, and easily label them as failures. And then when the next black person comes along trying to get a loan, they say, well, you people have been at bad risk because we have this many black farmers who have never been able to make it, and they went upside down on their loan, so we're not going to give you one.
Yeah, and it's done intentional. The relief bill provisions mirrors a bill introduced in the Senate last month by a group of senators. Think about it. This is so important how Georgia flipped the Senate. Senators Reverend Raphael Warnock, Democrat from Georgia, and Cory Booker, Democrat, New Jersey. The bill in turn draws on the Justice for Black Farmers, Big C. I'm telling people, I work in the banking industry and I know discrimination exists. It's a Justice for Black Farmers Act, a more sweeping piece of legislation that would issue land grants to black farmers to make up for past losses. Among other measures, in addition to debt relief, it also allocates slightly over $1 billion in programs that would assess discriminatory USDA policies. USDA's United States Department of Agriculture policies. Everybody has to eat, Big C. All food is grown out of the ground, at least most of the good food is, and provide technical support for black farmers and support research historically black colleges and universities. The Black Wall Street was 100 years ago from today, Big C, and now they're talking about redressing some of the discrimination that's happened for over the last 100 years to the black farmer, Big C. Your thoughts?
I mean, but we're in 2021. Why are we still discussing discrimination and racism in America? This is something that's not going to go away. I know you always say you have not because you ask not. You think over the last 100 years that these black farmers have not been asking for loans and trying to get loans, and yet they've been told no, and they've still been told no, and it has to become a federal law for them to be able to get the loan.
Hey, by what Malcolm said, by any means necessary. It's a benefited white farmers for years. They would just show up and assume they're going to get the loan from the USDA that have actively discriminated. 90% have 90% losses for black farmers since 1910 is crazy. But hopefully they will get it fixed through an act of Congress and the Senate. Big C, the President Biden doing his thing. I want to touch on a little bit of the world of boxing. And before I even do that, I want to just touch on, before I get into boxing, I was watching a program, I guess it was in the past week, maybe it was sometime last month. Time kind of flies lately, Big C. They were talking about owners of sports teams. And most of these owners, they own real estate. I believe 90% of all America's millionaires made it through real estate, land ownership. Almost 100% of poor people, they own nothing. But the real estate, farmers can take that land, they can grow fruits and vegetables, livestock, and they can build their equity a lot faster than a home can go up in appreciation. So when people say, well, maybe they don't work hard enough or they don't try hard enough, when you take away 90% of the growth and the wealth by denying loans and opportunities for growth over the past 100 years, Big C, that's part of the wealth gap they're trying to solve right now, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, it's just the continuance of racism in America, Charlton. It's not a wealth gap, it's racism. And racism has created the disparity in the United States, whether it's in politics, whether it's in the private sector, Charlton. And when you deprive people of the opportunity to grow and succeed, then you're always going to have a subservient part of society. And this is what has been done meticulously and intentionally with malice, Charlton, from white people throughout the history of America. When you go there and you force someone into poverty because you're going to gain from it, that's not, I mean, every one of these farmers were asking for loans.
Yeah.
They were asking, but they were not getting the loan. It wasn't because they were asking. It was because of racism said, no, we're going to starve you out and take what you have made good.
Yeah, it's happened, and I'm glad that it's being addressed by the president and Joe Biden doing his thing. Big C, I want to get into boxing. You know, boxing is normally fought on land someplace, even on Fight Island, where they have to go over to Dubai. And people in Dubai have great wealth based on oil and owning the land where the oil comes from, if that makes sense to you, Big C. Clarissa Shields, she Ross Marie, Eve DeClaire becomes 2-division undisputed champ. And Mrs. Shields, she wanted to make history on Friday night on multiple levels. The first part she handled before she even stepped in the ring, headlining an all-women's pay-per-view card. I mean, I haven't seen an all-women's pay-per-view card. I don't know if I've ever seen that, Big C, but she did her thing even dealing with that, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you know, we were just talking a few days ago, Charlton, about the Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier fight back in 1971 at Madison Square Garden being pay-per-view. Even back in those days, that top fights you could not get on regular television had to be closed-circuit pay-per-view, and it was $14.50. I remember that vividly. You know, the price that they were charging for admission.
Yeah.
And thinking about this, that here it is, and you're talking 50 years later, that women could accomplish that same feat, that an all pay-per-view female card in America being broadcast around the world. When we talk about the advancement of colored people and we talk about the advancement of women, a black woman headed the headline of that fight.
Yeah, she headlined the headline of that fight. But see, there's a second part, though, that I was just thinking about, too. She took care of in the ring in a way similar to all of her fights before. She defeated Declare Big C by unanimous decision to become the first boxer in the four-belt era since 2004, male or female, to be an undisputed champion in 2 divisions. She's retained her WBC and WBO junior middleweight titles while claiming her first IBF crown and the vacant WBA crown. Big C, your thoughts?
I mean, you think about that, to have titles across 4 boxing regions, Charlton, and no man has ever accomplished that. When we think about a lot of the accomplishments throughout the history of the world, and a woman to be the first to accomplish it, and a black woman doing that also, Charlton, we think about as NASA got off in its embryonic stage, when we think about the first Mercury spacecraft that orbited the Earth, Charlton, that was led by black women. They were all the mathematicians who set up the launch and the entry back into the Earth's atmosphere.
Yeah.
This is what's not talked about enough in society or on any show, Charlton, about the accomplishments and the contribution of black women to the world, whether it's in everyday life or even it's in sports, of what they do. We just celebrated the first African-American female NBA referee, Charlton. We just had an all-star game with 3 NBA black officials from historical black colleges, Charlton. So the accomplishments of black people in America and their contributions continue every day that we breathe.
Yeah, and she's mentioned that she did it in the ring after the fight, which marked the first time in 20 years a woman's boxing match was the main event of pay-per-view. Big C, now main event of pay-per-view happened to go to the UFC, where oftentimes women will get into the cage, the octagon, and do their martial arts skills, whether it's jiu-jitsu, karate, or whatever they're skilled at, Big C. And I see that it's just as popular as men, because for some reason women love getting in the octagon and fighting too, but oftentimes they don't hold for that many titles at the same time. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, it's unheard of that an individual to hold that many titles, 4 titles at one time, Charlton. First time in history that this has ever been done.
Yeah.
You know, it's very difficult just to hold one title or even multiple belts. But to be that accomplished and then talking about going into the octagon and capturing a title there, Charlton, think about a woman holding 5 different weight belts, 5 different title belts at the same time. Just unheard of.
Yeah, it's unheard of, Big C. There's a lot of good things, Clarissa Shields. You have so many people that tell women. I know Layla Ali, people say she's a model, Layla Muhammad Ali's daughter, and people oftentimes don't want to see women getting into that type of the business in the fight game, but they can get in there and mix it up as well as anybody else. And who's going to tell whether it's Layla Ali that shouldn't get into the ring and do their thing? There's some other great fighters. Katie Taylor, previous ranked number 2. Her record was 17-0 with 6 knockouts. Big C, a lightweight undisputed champion. Clarissa Shields, ranked number 1, record 10-0, 2 knockouts, division middleweight undisputed champion. And last fight was, she did her thing. She had a fight January 10th. Amanda Serrano, previous ranking number 3, 38-1-1, 28 knockouts. Big C. Jessica McCaskill, ranking number 4. She's 9-2 with 3 knockouts. And there's so many people that think about women aren't really shown for their prowess in the ring. And I think, to my knowledge, it was Layla Ali, Muhammad Ali's daughter, that I guess brought beauty into the world of boxing. Oftentimes, they weren't expecting someone who could get into modeling to choose to get into the ring instead. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, we have good-looking men boxing. We have good-looking women in boxing. Everybody's always looked at women from a feminist perspective, thinking that they were not tough enough to go out there and scrap like a man could. But, these women have been dominant. They're great physical specimens.
Yeah.
They take care of themselves mentally and physically, and they have the skills to go withstand it in the ring.
Yeah, I know I wouldn't want to get in the ring with some of those ladies that do their thing. The last time when I saw growing up, it was women that maybe were fighting for whatever they wanted to do. And I don't know if it's big. Is it big down south? I follow a lot of the MMA out here in the West Coast, but maybe it's a silly question. I know I talked to Holyfield's son that's doing a fight ring down in Atlanta a couple of years ago, but is fighting boxing in the ring is a big thing in the South, maybe the way it is out West. Big C, your thoughts?
I think boxing is still more dominant in the South, Charleston. You got to think about Deontay Wilder out of Alabama, who held the world title until he lost to Tyson Fury. I mean, boxing has always been big. I mean, Muhammad Ali fought down in the South prior to fighting Joe Frazier in 1971. He fought Jerry Quarry in Atlanta prior to going to New York to Madison Square Garden. So boxing has always been big in the South. I think MMA has been more of a coastal thing than it has been in the middle of the country.
Yeah, I know Kimbo Slice. I don't think there are any Kimbo Slice fighters in the world of women when it comes to boxing, or even in the world of MMA. I know everybody has their own desire to keep themselves pretty or not getting beaten up, but this all fair and level war. I remember, speaking of the MMA, I remember Chris Cyborg, I thought was going to be a fighter that no one could beat until she met a woman that had a little bit more oxygen in her tank, Amanda Nunes. I mean, there's so many great fighters out there. Nunes is doing her thing. She's right now #1 in the world. They're great in jiu-jitsu and all the other stuff that can really rough people up. So I wish all of the women nothing but the best going forward in the world of the fight business. And hopefully, maybe it's a business they don't want to encourage their children to follow in, if that makes sense to you. And speaking of the fight business, there's a guy by the name of Bruce Buffer, and he says, fighting! Well, Dak Prescott for the Dallas Cowboys, he just finished fighting for a contract, and it looked like it was a 15-rounder like back in the day. Now they do 12-round fights, Big C. But when you think about, I've listened to a lot of media, I mean, for many, many years. So maybe I'm biased, but when I hear some of the pushback, and I can't believe that he got this much money, they better win a Super Bowl or it's bust. And I don't think that's ever been said about anybody else, but I might have missed one or two that signed a multi-million-dollar contract. No one said Matthew Stafford is Super Bowl or bust, Kirk Cousins Super Bowl or bust. No one said that the Carson Wentz is Super Bowl or bust. I've never heard that until Dak did his thing, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I haven't heard that Aaron Rodgers is Super Bowl or bust, Charlton. I haven't heard any, as they call, franchise white quarterback is Super Bowl or bust after they get these big contracts. Even Drew Brees, Super Bowl or bust.
Yeah.
I haven't heard that about him, regardless of all the statistics that he put up. And no quarterback has signed a big contract and went and won a Super Bowl. That's the thing that you have to look at.
Yeah.
The closest that has come to that has been Patrick Mahomes. Even Russell Wilson's huge contract came after his Super Bowl victory. So when people want to talk about Super Bowl or bust, I mean, even Peyton Manning, he may have signed with the Denver Broncos, but it wasn't that big contract that got him to win that Super Bowl with the Denver Broncos. It was their defense.
Yeah.
But they put all this undue pressure on black quarterbacks. Everyone in the media is maligning Russell Wilson. They're maligning Dak Prescott. They're maligning Patrick Mahomes. And now they're going to malign Deshaun Watson also. They're going to say because these black quarterbacks have gotten these big contracts, they have no choice but to win the Super Bowl. If they don't win the Super Bowl, then they're a failure. The last I checked, Charlton, there's one damn quarterback every year that wins the Super Bowl, regardless of their color. But there are less white quarterbacks that make the playoffs every year percentage-wise than there are black quarterbacks in the NFL. So the future of the NFL has changed for our skin complexion behind the guy that is snapping the ball.
Yeah.
That has become the new phase of the league. The problem is, Charlton, that these white reporters on all these shows can't understand how blacks have become so prominent professionally in a league that ostracized them for so long at the quarterback position.
Yeah, the great Warren Moon had to go to Canada where he won 5 Grey Cups. But I never heard Danny White came out of Arizona State. I never heard his Super Bowl or bust when he signed. The great Rodgers Staubach, I never heard Super Bowl or bust when he signed. And I never heard that about touchdown Troy Aikman, that is Super Bowl or bust when he signed a big contract. I definitely didn't hear it about Tony Romo when he signed that is Super Bowl or bust. In fact, he never even won a playoff game. And that got him to call on the #1 crew with CBS. He and your friend, Big C, calling NFL football, telling people what the play is going to be because he has the script. But I never heard of that before. And I was thinking just maybe it's a lot with the black farmers that the United States Department of Agriculture has allowed a 90% decline in wealth and funding since 1910. And the land's still brown, Big C. The land is all brown, but you couldn't get a loan if you didn't have a certain skin color, Big C. Your thoughts?
You know, this is the crux of racism in America, Charlton. white people being appalled that black people are having advancement, and there's nothing that they can do about it. Sports has led the way for many people to gain black wealth in America, generational wealth, and that's what Dak Prescott did the other day, was get generational wealth for his family. They'll never have to worry about it again. Deshaun Watson, Patrick Mahomes, Russell Wilson, they've created generational wealth, and that's difficult for a lot of white people to understand. When you look at the richest 1% of people in America, Charles, you don't have 99% of them being black. You have less than 1% of them being black. But as these black athletes have escalated up the financial wealth pocket in America, Charles, a lot of people are sitting back saying, they're not worth it. You can get them for free. It was just like a white lady during the insurrection on the Capitol telling the police, you're not supposed to assault us. You're supposed to do it to the Black Lives Matter people, not white people. And that's how they feel in the financial world, Charlton, is that when these athletes get this wealth, is that they're creating power. And eventually these athletes with this power are going to eventually start buying up and taking over leagues. And that's what the white media is worried about. If the black athletes get that powerful in the league, will their job security still be around?
You know, it goes back to the USDA. They help cause a 90% decline in the black farmers that were growing fruits and vegetables to feed people. So when I just want to ask you, because I hope the whole media listens. I know all over the world, Big C Sports is able to be followed. But when I ask the mainstream media, and they'll normally bring on some guy that covered sports for 30 years or 40 years, and I've never seen the guy get this kind of money. If they don't win a Super Bowl, it's a failure. So when I ask you a couple of names, just give me your thought if it ever came through the media's, I guess, hatred of it. If I think of Jared Goff, when he signed his contract with the LA Rams, and now they shipped him over to the Detroit Lions, do you recall ever hearing a Super Bowl or bust when Jared Goff got that money? And I think that was after they went to the Super Bowl and lost. So your thoughts?
Well, I look at Jared Goff and Carson Wentz together because they both signed their contracts basically at the same time, getting these extensions, becoming the highest paid players in the NFL, Charlton, and neither one of them had won a Super Bowl as a starting quarterback. And the media loved them. They embraced them. This was the proper thing to do because these two guys were going to be the future of the NFL. You could build your franchise around them for the next decade. They were going to be staples. You made the right choice. Damn, I think less than a month ago, both of them had moving vans in front of their house.
Yeah.
So, you know, when the media wants to loll over these white quarterbacks that you can't do wrong, Jerry Jones never hesitated when he signed Tony Romo. Tony Romo was a free agent, okay? Dallas had a dozen quarterbacks starting since, Troy Aikman had left. They'd gone through basically a dozen quarterbacks.
Yeah.
So he gave Tony Romo, an undrafted free agent, one of the largest quarterback contracts in the NFL history, Charlton.
Yeah.
And he didn't squat about it. He didn't say, hey, the guy should be giving us a home team discount because we signed him as a free agent and gave him his shot in the NFL. He paid him for failing.
Yeah.
But Dak Prescott had came in and been successful ever since he was a fourth-round draft pick out of Mississippi State. I think that's down in the SEC. As a starting quarterback with the Dallas Cowboys. And set nothing but record numbers. Been a model citizen. You couldn't find anything wrong. He was cleaner than a slice of white bread, Charlton.
Yeah.
But they're looking for something. They're trying to find a reason why Jerry Jones made a mistake in making Dak Prescott wealthy as a black man.
Let me take it before we get up on. In fact, let's do the Big C pause now because we're halfway there. We're going to get the Big C pause. And then when I come back, I want to just bring up a couple of more names for all of our media brethren that talk about, hey, it's Super Bowl or bust. They gave this guy some money, unlike the black farmers that couldn't get any money for over 90, actually over 100 years, Big C. We'll take what's called the Big C pause. And in the words of the great Arnold Schwarzenegger, we'll be back. All right, we are back from the Big C pause, also known as the Big C timeout. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. There's so many apps, and I really do appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. I want to say thank you to Xfinity, Comcast TV, and Comcast Spotlight for presenting Big C Sports to the universe. Just like God said, open your cell phones and say, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will see all of our apps pop up from all over the world. Big C, Kirk Cousins. I remember he did his thing. You like that with the Washington Redskins and knocking nobody. I wish everybody the best. But was it a lot of pressure put on Kirk Cousins, who I think got his first ever playoff win with the Minnesota Vikings last season, Big C? They lost in the NFC divisional playoff game. But think about this. Did you ever hear that about Kirk Cousins when he signed with the Minnesota Vikings, that it's going to be playoff or is a bad bust? Big C, your thoughts?
No one said he had to get to the Super Bowl or, the contract wasn't worth it. Matter of fact, the Minnesota Vikings re-upped Kirk Cousins at the end of last season. Charlton gave him another $66 million guaranteed. No one said that was a bad move by the Minnesota Vikings to have a quarterback who's only had one playoff victory in his entire career, that was a bad move by guaranteeing, not signing him, but guaranteeing him every dollar that was on the contract.
Yeah.
I think about when the Green Bay Packers leveraged the farm with Aaron Rodgers a few years ago and made him the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. And ever since then, all I've heard is that you got to give Rodgers the ball with the last 2 minutes in the game. Well, the last time Aaron Rodgers had the ball on offense in the NFL last year, Jonathan, they kicked the damn field goal and they lost the game.
Yeah.
And no one was crying about the size of his contract.
Yeah, no one inquired about it. And so because I've heard so many things, I was just wondering, because maybe I missed something. I don't know everything, but Matthew Stafford, when he was with the Detroit Lions and signed that $100+ million contract, with the national media saying they gave him that money, is Super Bowl or bust. He's a bad quarterback if the Detroit Lions do not win the Super Bowl after they sign Matt Stafford. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you look at Matt Stafford, look at Matt Ryan in Atlanta, Charlton, after they lost the Super Bowl to the New England Patriots, giving up the most points in a Super Bowl in NFL history. They came out and signed him to one of the largest contracts in league history. He hasn't even sniffed the playoffs since then. I've seen dogs sniffing trees more than he sniffed the playoffs, Charlton, since he's got this big contract.
Yeah.
So as white quarterbacks get these big contracts in the NFL and they fade into seclusion, Charlton, from the playoff scene, no one complains about that. They start looking for other reasons. They start firing coaches, saying, well, it's the coach's fault. The coach is not making $41 million like Matt Ryan is.
Yeah.
You can't use an excuse when you're paying a guy between $31 and $41 million and start blaming everybody else on the team, especially as offensive linemen, when none of them are making more than – he makes more than all 5 starting offensive linemen put together.
Yeah. I wish everybody the best, but I do feel like they bring on guys to say how that's a dumb thing, that Jerry Jones just got dumb all of a sudden because he sees that he has something. He already has some gold in his hand, and his name is Dak Prescott. One more quarterback I just want to ask you about, maybe two, because, again, I want everyone to make the money. Out here in San Francisco, Big C, Jimmy Garoppolo, when they signed him to a $137 million contract, and they were saying it has to be Super Bowl, a championship, or it's a bad deal, and now they're talking about shipping him down the road, Big C. Was that a bad deal to give him that much money, Big C? Your thoughts?
It really wasn't a bad deal. You look at San Francisco, this was a team that was injury-plagued. He did make it to the Super Bowl with the 49ers, Charlton. Coming back the following year, the team was just beat up physically. They had salary cap casualties with that team also. Jimmy Garoppolo, when you look at him as they started, in his record, I believe, is 25-8. As a starter, is not bad based on the investment that they got. And his contract is really not that bad. It's only a $22 million cap hit against the 49ers.
Yeah. I want to ask you just one more player, because he did get a Super Bowl back in the day. Touchdown Drew Brees. Whether he's going to retire or not, who knows? People retire and then they come out of retirement. It's all fair and love and war, but people say what they got to say. But Drew also got, with all the accolades, and again, he's been a great quarterback, thrown for a lot of yardage. Maybe some of those yards were coming from behind. Maybe some of those yards are just because they've had a good defense that got them the ball a lot. But even with that, and he's a Hall of Famer, he has one Super Bowl, Big C. And, I mean, a lot of guys would like to say they have one Super Bowl. But he was not a bust because he set the passing yardage record. He did get to the Super Bowl many years ago. But when he got his big contract, I don't recall the pushback and how people hated that he got the money. I don't remember that when Big Ben Roethlisberger got the money. And he didn't get a lot of pushback from media, even though they got to bring him back now because of the cap reasons. But I never saw that, and I was just wondering, maybe it's just me, maybe it's my mind, Big C, but I wanted to see if you saw that too. Your thoughts?
Well, I'll come to Drew Brees' defense. I mean, he signed 3 different contracts over that time. He wasn't signing long-term contracts. But there was a three-year run, Charleston, that he and the Saints got robbed by the NFL officials. The one game in Minnesota, I would say that was just a bad move by a defensive back.
Yeah.
But they got robbed at home against the Rams when the no call was made. They got robbed at home against the Vikings when the no call was made.
Yeah.
He would have gotten the team to the Super Bowl at least 2 out of those 3 years if the officials had done their job. So I'm going to give Drew Brees a pass in this equation. And he also went in and restructured his contract this year down to the veteran million, but basically $1.4 million that he gave the rest of it back to the Saints, deciding what they want to do going forward.
Yeah. Now, Drew's done his thing. You notice after he got robbed, when the Rams came in there and robbed them in broad daylight, SoFi Stadium got the complete funding that it needed. The beautiful stadium in Los Angeles, California, Inglewood. Hey, somebody got to put the down payment, Big C. It's all fair in Leavenworth War. But I want to just ask you a thing about Dak Prescott. And I feel for the man because we just talked about the black farmers for the last century, Big C, have been deliberately denied loans by the United States Department of Agriculture. Everybody likes to eat. Good food comes out of the ground. I know they process a lot of things nowadays, but when you tell a man, not only the 40 acres and a mule that got vetoed, Big C, after Lincoln was assassinated, but when you tell a man that, no, we are not going to allow you to keep farming the land that you already have farmed, let it go into bankruptcy or foreclosure, and then they'll have a white good old boy come buy it up and farm that same land with the approval of the United States Department of Agriculture. That's called discrimination in banking. It's illegal, so therefore it must not happen. Big C, how could that happen? That's illegal, Big C, your thoughts?
Welcome to white America, Charlton.
Welcome to the world of banking. It's illegal. Hey, let's do it anyway. NFL football, what will the franchise tag do in the NFL for any good quarterback? Dallas Cowboy quarterback Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott, his contract is impressive. I mean, maybe the USDA can do this for black farmers, Big C. Sign a 1-year, $75 million contract. Signing bonus is $66 million, Big C. So first I want to ask you, we just talked about these great quarterbacks that have never been told, if you don't get a Super Bowl, it's a bust. Give me your feelings on the $75 million contract and the $66 million signing bonus. Your thoughts?
Charlton, I think it's only justified. If you break that down over the first 4 years the Dallas Cowboys had Dak Prescott playing quarterback, he made $2.7 million as the starting quarterback of America's team. $2.7 million. So take that 75 and add that to it, Charlton. That's $77.5 million. Divide that by 4 years, Charlton. Divide it by 4 years. He's making less than $20 million a year as a quarterback on America's team.
Yeah, I mean, I still think about the black farmers that have then been like billions of dollars in funding to operate their farms. And the only reason the USDA, United States Department of Agriculture, told them no is because they were not white. And now you have President Biden addressing the wrongs that have happened over the 100+ years, and people are saying, no, we can't do that. There's too much pork in this bill. Pork has grown on farms, Big C, called pigs. It's all fair in Leavenworth War. Going back to Dak Prescott, he throws with the football. Per season, $40 million. Per game, $2.5 million. Per minute played, 41,667. And per second played, that's about the much time that it takes you to scratch your nose for the allergies, Big C, about $694, Big C, your thoughts.
I mean, he's getting paid, and rightfully so, Charlton. I mean, this has become the wave of what quarterbacks are going to get, and I'm glad to see that black quarterbacks are the vanguard as far as leading the way of young quarterbacks making money now in the NFL.
Yeah, well, I want to ask you something, too, because I know he got the injury. Ironically, before touchdown to Mahomes, was able to get that big contract. He actually had an injury, too. He had a knee injury. Jimmy Garoppolo, before he got the big contract for the 49ers, he also had a knee injury, Big C. And now you have touchdown Dak Prescott before this big contract. He's also had an injury. What is it about injured players coming back and signing mega deals, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, anybody who plays more than a quarter in the NFL is injured. It's just depending on how substantial that injury is. But,
yeah.
You know, you got to understand when you get a quarterback that can lead a team in the NFL, they are a rarity. That's the reason why you only have 32 starters.
Yeah, it's important. I just got to take that back to what Dak Prescott did, the relief bill. And I know that people that complain about, well, we don't want to lose our country, or why do we want to create opportunities for everybody? There's always been opportunities created for people who are considered Caucasian. The relief bill is the most significant legislation for black farmers since the Civil Rights Act, Big C. $5 billion would go to farmers of color who've lost 90% of their land over the past century because of systemic discrimination and a cycle of debt. It just doesn't make any sense that people don't know this. I'm glad that we talk about it. People say, well, this is sports. There are no sports stadiums that are not built on land. There's no sports stadiums that are not built on land anywhere in the United States. And a little-known element of the president's...
Well, you have to also understand about those sports stadiums being built on land.
Right off.
That land was where minority people live. Every sports stadium in America is where minorities had land, and they also had businesses, Charlton. And that land was foreclosed or bought out real cheaply by those teams in the city.
I'm telling you, it's called gentrification. They're trying to build a stadium in Oakland and gentrify that part and kick a lot of people out who used to live there for years, Big C. But that farmer...
That's how the Rams built their stadium in Los Angeles.
Yeah, out there in Inglewood. Yeah, that's very well said. And it happens all over the country.
All minority businesses and low-income housing, and they condemned all that property and forced them out.
If you ever were to see, well, now it's called Oracle Ballpark, the beautiful, I still call it Pac Bowl Park, AT&T Park, beautiful downtown San Francisco. That used to be an area it was a depressed area. And they kicked a lot of people out, and now it's one of the most expensive real estates in San Francisco. But I think it's just important, a fraction of the $1.9 trillion bill that passed the Senate on Saturday. I just want people to understand Raphael Warnock, who he is, and how important and significant it is to flip in the Senate and then bringing this legislation, Big C. Advocates say it still represents a step toward righting a wrong after a century of mistreatment. Again, we're 100 years after the Black Wall Street, Big C. That was also destroyed by mainstream mobs because they did not want to see in black communities what just happened to Dak Prescott. They didn't want to see people have wealth. And it's one thing when your neighbor doesn't want to see you do better. But when the whole government said in the banking industry, deliberately say, no, we're not going to give you land, Big C, your thought?
Well, I don't know if you can call it righting the wrong because they're not going to get that 90% of land back, Charlton, that they've lost over the last century. You might have farmers move forward, but they will never get back the economic gain that was lost over that 100 years.
Yeah, a lot of those things are lost, but it is a change from the past president that said, no, there's no discrimination. What's the USDA? He didn't know what the United States Department of Agriculture was. I know he was, but at the same time, never did anything to address it. I want to talk a little about some black sports history. Every pro team, Jackie Robinson, Big C, we're inspired by the endeavors of these less celebrated competitors. They just were not celebrated as much. And that's why with Big C Sports, I love at least turning a bright eye on some of the accomplishments. William Dolly King. Think about this. Starring in all three sports at Long Island University. No one even thinks about Long Island University. They may think about Long Island iced tea, but anytime they're over in New York, they're thinking about Syracuse or maybe a St. John's, etc., Big C. But as a senior, King, he left Long Island University's varsity basketball team in the middle of his 1941 undefeated season, and he did that to play professionally, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, this was a man who had a bright future athletically and academically, Charles. And you think about him leaving to go play professionally in 1941. This is during World War II, Charlton.
Yeah.
That this man had the precedent that he needed to move on and advance his life.
Yep, he had to do it. He had to do what he had to do. And as I keep thinking about, anytime we talk about an accomplishment in the world of sports, and a lot of people want to pay homage to the great black athletes of all time, but they never bring up the fact that they did it in Jim Crow. They were not doing it in a society that was fair and equal with their white counterparts. Just like the United States Department of Agriculture, they refused to grant loans to black farmers, and all they were trying to do was grow food, Big C. Think about this, what King did. He created his first own pro team, the Long Island Blackbirds, also known as the Dolly King All-Stars, but soon joined the Harlem Yankees, Big C, a feeder team for the New York Reds, after his manager convinced King that organizing a team in mid-season would be much tougher than it seems, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, but he had the president, Charlton, to move forward, to go out and take on the challenge. This is what black people have done throughout their history. They've heard no from everybody ever since they've been in this country, Charlton. But without the black accomplishments that we have had in America, Charlton, America would be nothing compared to what it is today.
Especially the free labor when you don't have people get paid for the work they're doing. He signed with the Rochester Royals of the NBL in 1946 after becoming the first African American to join the league during his post-World War II period. Big C, very turbulent times, but he signed with the Rochester Royals back in 1946, the first African American. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, we have so many African American accomplishments in America, Charlton, that were fought against by white society then and still today. When you talk about the FDA not wanting to give black farmers loans in the 2000s, Charlton.
Yeah.
Over 100 years, they fought against the accomplishment and achievement of black people. When we think about government ran by whites, the FDA run by whites, and they're telling black people that they're not going to let them succeed.
Yeah. So if you're one of the mainstream media outlets and you're, I can't believe they're going to give money to these African Americans. Imagine the bank turning down your loan for your business or for your home or for your car. They did it deliberately. Okay, it wasn't because of they had great land. Land is your credit. It's all fair, love, and war. The Sacramento Kings, Big C, franchise known at the time as the Rochester Royals, is the first eventual NBA team to integrate when the aptly named William Dobie King joined the lineup. Can you believe that? Now they're owned by a man of color, Vivek Ranadive. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, ironically, they adapted his name in years to come, Charlton, becoming the Kansas City Kings after they left Rochester.
Yeah.
But the legacy of blacks has lived on in sports, Charlton, everywhere we turn a page. And it's been tried, white society has tried to discard it. But every time you look around, that shadow was a black man.
Yeah, that shadow was a black man. And now you have the Sacramento Kings that started on the East Coast and went to the Midwest. Now they're on the West Coast, owned by one of the few men of color in the NBA, Vivek Ranadive, to own an NBA basketball team. It's all fair in love and war. They are the Kings, Big C. The Kings also played, think about this, he also played professional football with the Long Island Indians, a pro baseball team with the Homestead Grays. Big C, your thoughts?
And people want to celebrate Deion Sanders and Bo Jackson for playing two sports. And here is a black man, Charlton, long before they were ever born, playing in 3 professional leagues in America. Find a white man that did that.
Yeah, I mean, it's so important in the fact that even the Sacramento Kings don't know today. I'm sure if you polled 100% of their fans, maybe only less than 1% know that the name King comes after him, a black man. It has nothing to do with some dice down in Vegas. It's all fair and love and war. But I really appreciate the way things are growing in the world of sports and people just acknowledging. But I still think about my family grew up in farming. When I was a young boy, we used to have to go out and get chickens. My mom would have us go out and get chicken. My grandfather had some livestock, and we would go out and raise chickens and had some pigs, Big C. I hated when the pigs got away because you couldn't call your friends to get your help. We had to get up and go get those livestock, Big C. And also had, other things that we learned to go out and till the land and grow fruits and vegetables on our own farm. And I think about that so many times. If you wanted something, Mom would just go out and till the ground. and plant fruits and grow fruit trees and put vegetables out there. And I think about it now because something that seemed like a simple and easy thing to do, people say you want to eat healthy, you got to eat food that grows out of the ground. But for having a bank, United States Department of Agriculture, tell her you can't get a loan because you're black and she already has a livestock in the land, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, this is what white America's always done. They've oppressed black America. I mean, it still shines in 2021. This has always been their agenda, to fight black people's advancement in America, an uneven and unequal society that we have lived in all this time. Those black farmers ask. I know you often use the term, if you don't, ask not, you get not.
Yeah.
And they've asked, Charlton, for hundreds of years in America for equality, for the ability to cultivate their land just like the white farmers, to be given an equal opportunity to succeed in this land of America, Charlton. And they've constantly been turned down. And, you always quote Richard Pryor, and I think about this in one of his skits that he did.
Yeah.
He always said, how long? And that was in asking a question. How long do we have to suffer? And that question still arises today. How long before we ever get equality in America? And we've asked for it for 400 years.
Yeah, well, you have not because it ask not is a biblical saying. That at the same time, you got to always fight for something that you want. And I do appreciate what President Biden is doing to address what has happened over the last century, Big C, to black farmers. And sometimes people think, oh, they don't want to farm the land. They've been told no. I want to just bring up this point before I touch on some of the NBA power rankings, because all of their stadiums, last I checked, is built on land, Big C. When oftentimes we hear about the poverty gap and the wealth gap in the United States of America, and they oftentimes will point to the inner cities where you have high-rise apartment buildings stacked on top of people stacked on top of people, and you hardly find a grocery store in most major cities. I was telling you, I got a friend of mine it's called the Conference of Elders, Big C, and there's a retired sheriff. He's retired 38 years in law enforcement, and when you talk to different people in most major cities, they don't have access to grocery store or healthy foods. And people say, well, that leads to a lot of things: bad nutrition, high blood pressure, diabetes, other illnesses that ails the black community. And when you think about it, those buildings are not owned by black men. For the most part, they're owned by people who are not black, and they're filled from bottom floor to the top floor with black Americans and people of color. But at the same time, you couldn't get a loan from the United States Department of Agriculture. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, proper nutrition in minority areas of America, especially in inner cities, is one of the biggest vasts that we have in America. To find proper nutrition in these markets is just unheard of. To get fruits and vegetables, everything is normally canned when you go into these places, Charlton, and a lot of sodium and sugar content that these people have to deal with, which creates poor, unhealthy diets. And that's systematically done, Charlton. It is hard in most major cities to find a decent grocery store, full-service grocery store in these downtown areas, and that is done intentionally. So these people have always asked, Charlton, for better nutrition in their cities. They ask, but they do not get, and that is done by the FDA and the government.
Yeah.
You think about any local government, Charlton, they can forcibly provide these types of stores. They can force a grocery chain to go into these areas, but they do not, because they know that poor nutrition leads to poor education and health amongst minorities.
Yeah.
So this is what white people do. Black people ask for equal opportunity, equal service, and they cannot get it. The healthcare system is the same, Charlton. They get poorly run healthcare systems, and this is systematically done. If you make people less of a people, then they can't achieve their full potential. And this has been done throughout the history of America. We talk about black farmers. Black farmers have been the farmers ever since America's inception.
Yeah.
What the hell people think the slaves were doing for all those years that they were enslaved, Charlton? They were farming every day.
That's
they
right.
can do it better than any white man in America throughout history. They still can do it better. they just don't get equal opportunity. And when you steal their land through foreclosure and you don't give them the loans to get the seed, to get the machinery, or even the livestock that they need, Charlton, to make their farms flourish, this is what America has had, racism, and it still exists.
You know, it's so important, Big C. The $1.9 trillion pandemic relief, people got to understand it, is more important than what Dak Prescott did, Big C, awaiting final passes by the House of Representatives. It would bring the United States in line with what many other advanced democracies around the world by providing regular, unrestricted federal payments to families, Big C. It's so important. It's more important than who won a football game all around the world. Federal payments to families with children that would cut the rate of child poverty in half. That's important. In all, 13.1 million children and adults would be lifted out of poverty, including 5.7 million under the age of 18. According to one analysis, it would be a historic byproduct of President Joe Biden's massive economic response to the COVID-19 pandemic. It's not as big as the $2 trillion in tax relief that Trump gave to Wall Street, Big C. No one complained about that, Big C. But the last thing I'll say before I throw it to you is important. An analysis by the Urban Bookings Tax Policy Center found that the bill will increase the after-tax income of the poorest American by about 20.1%. The second lowest figure, it would become a one-time federal payment of $1,400 for most Americans, as well as elements tailored to benefit families of the poor. I've gone to school many times, and I knew that some kids, the only meal they got, Big C, is with that free school lunch, and because a lot of them didn't have food at home, Big C, and they were black and white, Big C. Your thoughts?
Yeah, talked about when you get the Republican wigs out there and you get Fox News telling people that this is going to create, an advantage for black people in America and going to lift them out of poverty and going to put them on a more equal plane. They're not telling the poor white people it's going to do the same for them, because there are more poor white people in America than there are poor black people in America.
Yep.
But they only attack the people of color, Charlton, telling them of the disparity that they're going to get a break. But as you said, none of those Republicans cried when Trump gave all the rich and wealthy people a tax break in America and hurt the poorest of Americans by not doing that for them also, Charlton. So as we look at this, these bills come under racial design, is what they are. They are to attack lower-income minority people. And that's what it's all about. Those have always been the talking points of America. They can love you when you're an athlete. Every white person in America loves you when you're an athlete. They cheer for you. They buy your poster for their kids, put it on their bedroom walls, buy you the shoes that you wear so that their kid can have shoes like you. Hopefully he'll become an athlete like you. But you take off that damn uniform and not have that jersey and that name on your back, they don't care about you. And that's how they feel about black America.
Well, the United States Department of Agriculture said no when black men and women came in to get a loan for their families. It's important. Final thing before I just throw a sports thing at you, and it's so related to what the USDA was doing to black farmers, telling them no. In addition to direct stimulus payments and enhanced unemployment benefits, the American Rescue Act, it's not called the African American Rescue Plan Act, Big C. It's called the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, will create a refundable tax credit worth of $3,600 per year for children under the age of 6 and $3,000 a year for kids between 6 and 18. I grew up in a diverse community, and oftentimes white kids would come up to our house to eat. And because we already had lots of food, refrigerator full of food, a freezer in the garage, and some of my white friends, they would tell me, man, you guys have a lot of food. And none of their business, but when you offer somebody something and you have more than they have, sometimes they were shocked to see that we had a lot more than they had because they watched a lot of television. But it's all fair and level more. I appreciate the Biden administration doing their thing. Last thing I want to throw in, Big C, is when we talk about sports and we talk about opportunity and the USDA telling black men no, you're going to see something that's coming up. It's called March Madness. And we'll talk about it more coming up on March Madness. It's going to be in Indianapolis this year. And the madness thing about it is when black farmers couldn't get loans for over 100 years, Big C, from the United States Department of Agriculture. What you're going to see with March Madness is you're going to see an array of young men, mostly black, on the Power 5 teams that are going to go into March Madness. And as we talk about money in this country, if they get everything they want through TV, etc., and media rights, it's $1 billion month, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, the NCAA has always been that, Charlton. They didn't have it last year. We're going a year without having a champion. The actual reigning champion are the Virginia Cavaliers from 2 seasons ago. But this has become a ritual in America. March Madness, Charlton, where we went from when I was a kid to having 16 teams to 32 teams to 64 and now 68 teams, Charlton. It's always been a nail-biter. And a tournament of excitement and unexpected losses and victories.
Well, it's going to be the Gonzaga Bulldogs this year in 2021, crowning at one shining moment, Big C. This election is going to start Sunday. It's at 6 p.m. Eastern Time on March 14th on CBS Sports. The first 4 is going to be 4 p.m. start on Thursday, March 18th. First round, I believe, is a 12 p.m. start Friday, March 19th, and Saturday, March 20th. Second round, 12 p.m. start on Sunday, March 21st to Monday, March 22nd. The Sweet 16, I know you love the Sweet 16, Big C. That's when you got your first driver's license. It's a 2 p.m. start on Sunday, actually Saturday, and then March 27th, 1 p.m. on Sunday, March 28th. The Elite 8, 7 p.m. start Monday, March 29th, and 6 p.m. to start Tuesday, March 30th. The Final Four is going to be 5 p.m. start on a Saturday, April the 3rd, and then the NCAA Championships at 9 p.m. on Monday, April 5th, when Gonzaga University, the Bulldogs, will cut down the nets for their first ever national championship. The second Jesuit university from the West Coast Conference to win a national championship since the University of San Francisco back in the day. Big C, your thoughts?
You got some tall dreams.
It's tall dreams, but I want you to write it down because I just told you what's going to happen, and it's all fair in love and war. We talked so much about what's going on in the world of hoop dreams and basketball and football and baseball, everybody making their money. The USDA really being, the light's been shining on the USDA. Maybe they need Queen Elizabeth to say she had no idea that the United States was also discriminating against black Americans. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, you got to think about the aristocrats of England. This is a country that, you know, has never had any blacks in power. And she's going to sit around. The most blacks that she's ever seen in that country at one time, Charlton, was during World War II. And for her to walk around and say, we don't have racism, you know, you don't even take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah, you don't take it with a grain of salt. But that's why God created Big C Sports. It's all fair, level war. Black farmers, go there and line up, submit your applications, and get your money. The farmers have been doing it for years. Big C, back in the day, there's a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. Rumble, young man, rumble. With all you've got to use, how can you lose? Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, Charlton, there's a couple dozen players wandering around today wondering why they weren't franchised by their NFL teams. And teams are figuring out they don't have to give out those big hundreds of $1 million to the players. Once again, I want to thank our frontline healthcare workers, our nurses, our doctors, our first responders. They're not worried about what's in your pocket. They have the medical needs of yours taken care of.
Yep, they always do. And I want to thank all of our first responders and everybody doing their best to make sure that people can stay safe. You can stay safe, too, every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide when you follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As my mama always says, there's never, ever an excuse for racism or domestic violence. If you know any man, woman, or child going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and ask for help, because no man, woman, or child should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.